weekly links on your
You
invitations.
just got to keep up with me, man. You just got to keep up with me.
Every time I'm like, why does it say that the show's ended? And I'm like, I'm in last week's show.
We lost somebody. All right. This is a data center news show, and it's a day before the 4th, and none of these jokers are working, so they happen to hop in the show, which is super awesome. Oh, wait, we lost Martin. Is he coming back? All right.
You hear that thunder outside, Amy?
No. Well, I'm out in Austin. I'm in Houston with my dad.
Oh,
my dad.
Well, it'll be there in a couple hours then.
Yes, it will. All right, we're gonna have a fun show today because it's a big old party, and we're gonna talk data centers and modular construction and all sorts of fun things. Are you drinking a beer, Curtis?
No, beer? This is coffee.
Oh, it looked like beer for a second. I was like, I should get my wine or whiskey or something. I mean, it is I
think it's Guinness, Curtis. You can just
Yeah, you have to lie.
No, I drink Guinness in a much larger cup than this, Martin.
For sure. All right. Well, let's get the party started, and I'll let my guests introduce themselves. Mr. Chris Woolsey. Go, sir.
Chris Woolsey. I am a solutions engineer for a data center company known as Flexential.
Yeah. Who came up with that name, by the way? I mean, what were they drinking when they came up with it?
I will give you the abbreviated version of what marketing did. Poll our customers, ask for keywords that made sense. Flexible and essential made it to the top. And then they mashed them together, and there was a domain name for you too. That last part was injection.
The domain name was free. That's what it was.
Hey, Chris, and Sixtera was already taken, so
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. In whatever flavor or form it was that week.
That's too funny. I've always wanted the job of naming new drugs, like the weirdo things that there's a new drug that comes out and it's like whatever. I wanted that job, but I wanted to go back to like how the Indians used to name people. And that's how I would name drugs. That's what I wanted to do for a hot second. And then, I got in the data center industry, so I gave up on my dream. So just saying out loud. All right, Jake, your turn, bud.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Jake Anderson. I am the head of business at PV Case. I oversee our prospect business unit. We are a software company that automates the entire value chain of originally renewable development, but within our prospecting solution, really focused on automating site selection for developers. We've really been growing out in the data center side. So I really oversee our macro level business plan, execution across product strategy and commercial side of the coin. So really excited to be here and speaking from the software side. So nice to meet y'all. I'm looking forward to it.
You keep losing people. All right, Curtis, go ahead, bud.
Hi, everybody. Happy near Independence Day for those of us in the States. I'm Curtis Friesen. I am the director of market development for Mission Critical for Victaulic. Victaulic specializes in mechanical pipe joining systems and pipe fittings and couplings and valves, et cetera, and a lot of different verticals. And we are now directing a lot of resources towards keeping up with all the data center demand that's going on, especially in terms of some of the liquid direct solutions and applications that we're supporting. And then I'm also a consultant for the International Data Center Authority in the development of digital economies and training and certifications and facility audits and assessments.
Yep, that's awesome. And Curtis is a longtime panelist or guest of the show. It's awesome. Thanks for coming again, buddy. Chris.
Hey, hi.
The other Chris.
Hi. I'm first time on the show. Excited to be here. I'm CEO of Mod 42. We build factory-built data centers, modular data centers to deploy to the site. Ready to go as soon as the site's ready. So excited to be here and talk about modular.
That's awesome. And Martin.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having me on again. Happy 4th to everybody. I am executive director at Johnson Controls. Leading.
Oh, we lost him. He's going in and out. He must be in the woods or something, enjoying his 4th. We'll get him back in here in a second. All right, Sean.
Was his last word leaving and then he just dropped? Or no, he said leading. I think he said leading.
He's leading. He's leading. We're going to get him back. All right, here he comes.
I said I was
You were
leaving.
leaving.
Yeah, I was like, did you say leaving or leading?
I'm having some kind of connection, so if I lose you guys again,
Yeah.
And he's
All right. Okay, Sean. We're going to go. If he comes back, I don't know what we're going to do. All right, Sean, go, buddy.
Hey everyone, Sean Farney, VP of Data Center Strategy at JLL. We help everyone find digital dirt, and we run a lot of data centers for folks. And I'm helping my clients figure out dense GPU, and perhaps that's modular. I was doing modular before modular was cool, really long time ago. So what a great topic.
Yes. You are the modular OG. Is that what you're saying? The OG.
I've been called worse, yeah.
Back when we were calling it Data Center 2.0.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Remember that, Sean?
Oh yeah.
Or probably even well before that, I'm sure. That was like 2011, I think.
Very interesting. All right. Well, we're going to get into this. We'll start talking about modular construction. So, Chris, tell us about kind of your modular solution and kind of what you built.
Yeah, absolutely. So we build 3 megawatt data centers, data facilities in a factory. So you get the factory consistency. The end user can come see the factory, the data center before it arrives at their site. So we can do concurrent site prep while the data center is being built. They can come see it, and then we, provide the data center, in a consistent fashion. We can crank them out every week. So we get better speed to market, faster builds, and we also are substantially cheaper than maybe a traditional build because you don't have nearly as much space that's not dedicated to, say, the compute space, either in a volume or a square footage case. And so we get really good at doing 3 megawatt bite-sized pieces, and then we repeat it over and over and over again until we get to whatever capacity the end user, the client would like. We're also flexible throughout the design. We've all talked about how the data centers and are changing constantly. The technology is changing. Well, that gets to be very hard when maybe you are building a traditional and you're designing for X kW a rack, and then it changes and you got to account for, direct to chip instead of rear door. Well, we're modular, super flexible. If the first one was 75 kW rack and the second one needs to be a 200 kW rack, no problem. That can easily be accomplished through the life of the build. So, I really believe that modular is the way to go. We can, and I even say we could make the modular more modular. We can keep breaking this down into pieces that, benefits the end user, from a speed and cost. Think about the speed. If everyone's looking for 4,000 amp switch gears and the 4,000 amp switch gear has a 1 year lead time, well, okay, why don't we design around 800 amps and we can get the switch gear in weeks instead of waiting a year, So, we just keep breaking it down. And then, like I said, the repeatability is really where you get the cost efficiency, the time to market efficiency, and again, the quality. So the repeatability is really what I think makes modular, potentially a superior way to go when building out some of these data centers.
That's cool. And by the way, this is an open discussion, y'all. Anybody ask any questions? So y'all go. I know there's a couple people in there.
Hey, Chris, do you do your own manufacturing?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Yep. We have a manufacturing partner. We've got it all lined up. We have vendors ready to go. We've got the designs ready to go. So yes, we do our own manufacturing.
Very cool.
Hey Chris, do you quote generically a cost per megawatt for your produced product?
I'd say, because our product, our specific equipment product, it wouldn't be generic. We're providing the data center, and I can quote that data center with powered racks then that wouldn't be generic. But, when we're talking about the overall build, I'm not in control of, let's say, the medium voltage distribution or the site distribution. But I've been doing modular for about 8 years now. I kind of have an idea what those costs are. And when I quote, I a lot of times say that, these are high level costs, but we all know, like, traditional data centers are, say, $7-8 million a megawatt is what maybe even up to 10 million a megawatt. And when I've priced out my builds and using our data centers with all our equipment, we're a fraction of that. We're half of that cost. Even if I'm super conservative in what the site and the medium voltage and the low voltage cost might be, but just knowing that our building costs are that much less, our site improvement, less impact to the site, because if you think about modular, if you kind of take out all that white, some of that white space or some of that volume, our sites are maybe for, say, a 100 megawatt build, we might be, 10 acres versus, 50 acres, or 60 acres. So, yeah, I mean, again, when I quote, I try to help my clients understand, what that overall cost savings might be for the life of the project. But my numbers are hard numbers when I quote the data center.
Yeah, no, it's a so much depends in that.
Yeah.
But just curious if there was a round number, because we don't often popularize the fact that there's a huge cost.
I mean, I'd be interested to know what everyone's take is. I say our new modular builds, at least with what we're designing, I say we're $4.5 to $5 million a megawatt, compared to the $7-8 million a megawatt. So again, there's a lot of assumptions in there, except for my costs. I know what our costs are. But I don't know what everyone else has heard as far as like dollars a megawatt might be for modular.
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Chris, Flexential doesn't build modularly, right? Y'all build big old
Not in
buildings.
the context that he's talking about. No, we've got so where we built a hall, then we have a building next to it or a hall next to it. We kind of just build that way, but that's not as effective and efficient as what Chris was talking about there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what are the challenges? Is modular? So I mean, because there's a story out that it's going to grow to be about 90 billion. I love those. Y'all know I hate those projections because they're stupid. But what is the hesitation behind somebody not adopting modular or adopting? I mean, what is the deciding factor? Who wants to jump in on that one? Sean.
So I think there's a bias against modular for a lot of different reasons. I think we're still really addicted to greenfield, large scale greenfield, right? The economics specific for the hyperscalers work much better at very, very large scale. But I do think we're moving into a period where the smaller data center may be back. And this is tied directly to NVIDIA's completely redefining data center architecture. And back to GPT saying now we're looking at 5 megawatt blocks, and even smaller than that are the SuperPOD architecture, 32U, 64U, to do inference. And you don't need 100 megawatts. So if you're not reselling it, you're not a cloud service provider and or not doing LLMs and you're doing inference, smaller may be more appropriate, particularly for all the enterprises who are going to have to do inference potentially within a 3 millisecond or so ring, which really screams, hey, I can do modular, a modular retrofit or a modular deployment within my old on-prem data center that I've been throwing stuff out of into the cloud for 15 years or out in the parking lot. So I'm starting to see this with clients, like I do inference, it's 6x if I try to do it up in Azure. What about, can I get, a megawatt of GPU, HPC module out in the parking lot where I can, it's only really 8 cabinets or less when GB300s. Can you get me a module or a container out in the parking lot so I can do my AI inferencing and not have to try to do it up in the cloud? I have the scale power because all that power is still sitting there for my on-prem data, which I'm almost completely. So it's really, really interesting. And I think there's this bias to go big. And I'm guilty of this. I built a 120 megawatt data center in 2008, and they haven't gotten smaller, right? So greenfield, the bigger the better. Go go. I do think we're in an inflection point, and we have a different accretive segment of customer and use case because of AI. I'll stop there. I was getting going. I was in danger of
You were. You were getting going. You were. So what about?
There's also something to be said about the difference between an appreciating asset and a depreciating asset, and the tax implications there, where a traditional data center is also a piece of real estate, right? And a modular data center really is. I mean, but there's also benefits there in terms of like writing off the capex, I suppose. So it really depends on what your goals are.
Yeah, I mean, bonus depreciation is still alive, so you can write it off for, still stayed in the one big beautiful bill. If they pass it, whatever. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. No idea. Bonus depreciation was a big thing for a while. So, yeah, for sure. So
pro and con too, right? So it's, if you can build cheaper and faster, and then that speed time you get ROI generating, it's like, does that offset maybe some of the negative, and turn people's heads enough to make them rethink maybe what we've done with traditional, especially if you could say we could be on, what if we could be on 6 months or half the time? Let's say it was a 3-year build and you're all a year. I mean, that's a lot of revenue you're generating in a year before maybe your traditional is even done. But I love what Sean said too. Like if you can put one in a parking lot, like even like, your existing compute's not going to go away, sometimes. And so you still need to keep your existing compute. It doesn't just get replaced automatically. So you need to keep that going. So how do you keep that going while also adapting to new? Maybe you do put a modular in a parking lot. And that's been some of our business cases as well, talking about that just to start, the expensive upgrades. So, I think there's a case there too. Obviously, I totally agree.
So,
Amy, I think I maybe have mentioned this project on the show before, but it's a really good example of this. When TAS built the modular data center for the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles a few years ago, and there was it came out of an absolute necessity to pivot the project, and there was some agility there when HKS, the architects, called TAS, and they're like, we can no longer put the data center inside of the stadium.
I didn't know that.
Are you able to design something that we could put into the parking lot, right? And I think it had to do with the height of the field itself, but also because they wanted to use some of that interior space for more suites, and they just didn't want to take up inside of the stadium for revenue purposes. And TAS was able to design. I think it was 2.5, maybe 3 megawatts within. They designed it and manufactured it and shipped and installed and commissioned everything in 6 months.
Yeah.
Is that the storm, Curtis?
Yeah, you hear that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, my dogs are going nuts in the other room over here.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, but that's super cool. Like, yeah, that's super cool. I mean, it could be that. It could be that solution like Sean was talking about, where it's like we need one and we don't have room, so design around it. But that's super cool. I did not know that story. That's awesome. That's
there's a great video on YouTube about it. It's like a 3-minute video that's
I'll have to watch
really
it.
Great.
I tell everyone we could do 3 megawatts. We can get you a 3 megawatt in 3 to 4 months, and then you had install and commission. I mean, if they did it in 6 months, that sounds right about what I'm figuring. Our first one would be. Yeah.
That's interesting. Can they just so Chris, when you stick it in the parking lot, they just need to bring an extension cord to it, and that's all they need?
I mean, it might be a pretty big extension cord, but yeah, we can do an extension. Hey, if you got, I've said it, you got power and internet, Ethernet, we can give you a data center.
All right, that's pretty groovy. So if you're looking at the overall development cycle of a project, like everybody talks about, and that's why Jake's here. Everybody talks about, okay, we got to find power, and it's going to take us 100 years to get hooked up to power. Your post, I mean, once they find the power, then it's great. So, Jake, tell us about your solution a little bit and how you're helping folks find power so they can find.
Think internet got a little laggy there. Sorry for jumping in. Yeah, happy to speak to that. And yeah, and even too on that kind of last, it was interesting hearing kind of the traditional of the really big sites, hyperscalers still make sense, modular coming in, so our software company on the site selection side, we actually came out of the renewables, so the generating side. And it's very interesting hearing a lot of this conversation as we've met more and more data center companies talking about going through a similar evolution. Solar farms started out these really large scale utility, 200 to 300 megawatts, lots of land. But as the industry has really grown and more needs have come, distribution interconnected projects, behind the meter projects, and a lot smaller have come, and now they really coexist nicely. They both really kind of serve different purposes. So it's really interesting to hearing how a very similar path on the load side with data centers is occurring. But so yeah, I wanted to comment on that because it's interesting hearing all of the activity on the modular side. But to your initial question, Amy, yeah, so what we do over at PV Case with our site selection software, I think if you were to rewind the clock on either the generation or the load side with data centers, it's, where is power, where is land? And so land was something people could kind of work through, but it used to be a very manual process. So our software originally, we started out by automating that whole land site selection process, understanding constraints, hazards. But nowadays, where we are with the grid, it is more complex than ever, which I know this group is well aware of. There's batteries, large-scale storage, renewables that are intermittent. It's a much more complex grid, which is a lot less reliable. And so what we have now brought into our software is helping companies actually find power. So we basically run these what are called power flow models that are the exact same type of models, run in the exact same way as grid operators actually analyze new data center or renewable generation projects. We provide that data to our users, fully geolocated right through our platform, so that they can ensure any project that they develop, there's going to be ample power there. But not only that, also understanding the upgrade cost that goes along with it. Typically, when you're building any project at these points, you're going to have to incur some level of grid maintenance or grid upgrade fees. And then we also provide estimates of that. So in short, we've now really tied the land side to the power side to really help our data center customers know exactly where they should be looking to locate these assets.
Awesome. And you do on the grid capacity side too, and you do have a transmission engineer that works with y'all, which is super cool. I mean, the data is not just, oh yeah, we think there's available power. You're doing stuff around grid capacities and things like that too, right?
Exactly. So we are running what are called these full-scale injection and then withdrawal studies. Withdrawal would be applicable to the data center. So we literally go into every grid operator, whether it be an ISO or in the regulated markets, the utility, we go into their detailed modeling handbooks of exactly how they model and estimate and evaluate projects in their capacity modeling protocols. And then we run those exact same models with the exact same input data and the exact same assumptions so that customers know exactly what that power flow upgrade and capacity perspective looks like before they go submit into that process where they, take 2 months to then tell you, hey, you're going to have to pay $20 million to upgrade here, and this site that you thought was viable no longer is. So yeah, we're not only just kind of making a guess, we are running the exact same types of power flow studies that the grids do. So our transmission engineer actually comes from Georgia Power, and then we have a full modeling team that's actually running these power flow simulations. So we're running it. And then the geolocation is the other element. So if you traditionally just run these models, it will tell you substation 1007 has capacity, but it does not tell you where substation 1007 is. So that can be not the most useful of output, whereas we've gone ahead and taken all of that modeling data, tied it to our geolocation data so that you can literally go into an area and say, hey, I only want to look at substations where I've got at least 200 megawatts of power, and my upgrade bill is going to be less than $5 million. We can immediately find those. So then you're only looking at sites, again, fake numbers, but only looking for sites in those areas.
How far do you get into with renewables? Like, do you track? Like, I was talking to a company that does kind of modular fuel cells. Do you guys and like possibly teaming up? Well, we are going to team up with modular fuel cells with modular data centers and, kind of provide the whole package there. But do you guys track gas as well, like where gas might be?
Yeah, for sure. So we have hundreds and hundreds of data sets really across every spectrum all preloaded out of the box in our platform. So yeah, the way we think about the platform is we incorporate, again, hundreds up to thousands of data sets into the application across environmental, power information, grid information. And then what we really do is it's fairly use case agnostic. We basically allow users, for whatever their need is, to come in and say, hey, this is what I consider a good property from a power, land, et cetera perspective. And then our software basically automates all of that work that traditionally was done by hand and then says, here are your options, so that then the developers can actually go try to attain those sites and really work the project. We try to say, automate the things the computer can do so that we can enable the human to focus on the actual development work. So yeah, we've definitely seen some unique technology types outside of just solar data center. We have a broad spectrum that we support.
How are they calculating for phantom loads? That's like the big topic. Like the Texas legislature just passed a bill, and that was one of the things that they were talking about is these phantom loads that are out there that people aren't using, I guess. Someone explain to me what's a phantom load. Like somebody says, I need 200 megawatts of power and they're only using 50, so they got 150 megawatts of phantom load. Is that what that is? Someone explain that to me, please. Chris Woolsey. Do you have phantom loads, Chris Woolsey?
Well, I'll say I'm not overly familiar with that term, so it might be a little more selective to what you've run across. But what you did describe there with the larger capacity of ASP versus what gets utilized is definitely a very common conversation, though.
Yeah. Okay. Who else can explain what a phantom load is? What is it, y'all?
We have had a problem forever because of uptime requirements, right? So if you build a 2N data center, you are purposely stranding power physically and virtually, right? You have two separate redundant lineups and supply. So that's built in, like that's part of your business model. You're not going to, you may roll over, but you're not going to touch that load ever, like by design, right? So, and Dean Nelson has a really articulate version of this argument and some calculations on what this kind of, not called phantom load, but it's the redundant part of your facility's total supply, not critical load. So this is just what our customers want, and sure, that power could be used by some other process, but you get into quite a jam if you're using this power that you have in reserve for if you're dual fed and one feed goes down and you got to roll over and get supply from another feed, and it's in use, then you're going to have an outage, right? So that's really how the business has been built over the years, and there's a lot of it, and the utility would love to be able to sell that, do something else with it, and it's part of some of the demand programs. It gets very, very complicated, but no one's going to put up their hand and say, hey, yeah, you can have this power that I'm not using for now. As long as I can, within 3 micros, I can roll over and grab it when I have a problem and or my gens don't fire up. So that's just kind of part of it.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
And when it comes to just the grid operator processes, it all kind of gets factored into your load perspective. So when you're modeling the grid for capacity, you're factoring in all things generation as well as all things load, whether that's phantom load, active. You're also tracking the timeline curves of it. Summer obviously is a different perspective than spring, which is a different perspective than winter. So all of that usage gets baked in. And now that we have many more intermittent assets, both on the generation and the load side, whether on the generation renewables, on the load side, things like EV charging, during midday, you're going to have spikes where in the middle of the night, you're going to have less charging. So all of that gets factored into these power flow models that have gotten increasingly complex over the past 15 years or so. And that's the type of, again, modeling that we're trying to help democratize to the industry so that it's not so reliant on, again, these very lengthy, timely power flow studies that come from the grid operator during your project development cycle.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Amy, I was thinking about what Jake is talking about and how he's able to find some of that excess load or maybe stranded load or whatever, and maybe just pulling it back, talking about a little modular. It's just sometimes the land around those loads maybe not the right size for a traditional, or the right form, or it's somewhat small, or it's awkward, whatever, right? And the land to build a traditional data center is on, is hundreds of, a mile away or something, right? And then getting the power there gets very costly and very complicated to just like, hey, this substation is powered, but the land to build on is a mile down the road. But there is a parcel that's closer. It's just not going to apply and be able to work for what we're used to with these large scale, campuses or buildings. I would say you should consider modular because, we can twist and turn these 3 megawatt modular structures and mirror them or duplicate them. However, the site allows us to orient it to maybe not have to worry about, you take advantage of the land that is right next to the stranded power, not have to, find this perfect piece of property that's, a mile down the road. That's a nice, square, rectangular, whatever lot. Right. So I was just thought I popped my head as I'm listening to Jake. I'm like, boy, I need to talk to Jake after this.
Are there like any temporary situations where a modular data center is needed, like say disaster recovery, the Olympics, Super Bowl? Like, is there something like that where,
I hope so. I want to be in that market. That sounds awesome. Maybe the military needs them for temporary.
Exactly. Right. I mean, can you plop down your data centers and pick it up and move it on? Is it data center on wheels?
They're modular. They're temporary.
They're usually about the size of a shipping container.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, ours are.
They kind of have to be because that's how you got to be able to transport them on the back of a semi truck or a.
So ours are 10-foot wide structures, so they're not special permitting. I mean, maybe like state to state's a little awkward, but ours go on flatbeds. Is what I'm saying. So.
But don't you have to build like all the cooling and all the other infrastructure around it? Like, I mean, is that like on wheels too?
You can do skid mounted. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, you can do skid mounted chillers. I mean, like if we're talking truly temporary, truly like pick up, go to the next site. I mean, I mean, you can do skid mounted generators. You can do skid mounted chillers. We have UPSs and the batteries in a skid, and then that connects to the data center skid. So, I mean, in theory, absolutely. If you want this to be like, we're pulling this in, it's literally temporary for the Super Bowl or for this setup, not a problem. I mean, I don't see that being an issue whatsoever.
It's another shipping container full of stuff.
Right.
I deploy both HP and Dell containers, and one container was storage compute. It's about 500 kW, and then the container that sat on top was mechanical and electrical. And
sure.
Yeah, we threw them on trucks and shipped them around. And then from that, Microsoft's next phase, that was Gen 2. The Gen 3 Microsoft phase was building all modular with basically Lego blocks. And that was first done in Virginia. And then that idea really took off across the industry and pretty standard now. Even in large campus environments, you've got power blocks, your gens and switchgear and transformers and mechanical, electrical, all skid mounted stuff. So the concept is out there. I think we'll just see a shrinking of the size, the form factor, like Chris is talking about. And I think it'll even go down to a few hundred kW, maybe a megawatt, because again, a megawatt now is less than 8 cabinets. Crazy, can go right over there in my living room. So things are changing. That the compute technology now really supports miniaturization of the data center, and modular has been waiting for this for 20 years. And again, I think the first Sun did it, Dean did it in a shipping container first in test, and then we did it at large scale at Microsoft. And so it's out there. This is not new for the industry. And this is the next segment, use case, form factor. I think modular has got huge wind in its sails.
I mentioned Data Center 2.0 earlier in the show, and it reminds me of the, I think it was the Hosting and Cloud Transformation Summit in 2011 or 2012 that was at the Santa Clara Convention Center. And we're calling it Data Center 2.0 because it was a data center in a box, or really in a shipping container. And there were 3 shipping containers there on the show floor at the Santa Clara Convention Center that were, one of them was Active Power. And then I think IO or Digital Realty had one as well. And then there was a third company. I can't remember who the third one was, but they just had them all like kind of lined up, and they were just retrofitted shipping containers. And probably, I mean, if we were to guess, I can't even recall how much KW was in that container back in 2011. I mean,
500.
About 500, yeah.
I got 2,000 servers in a shipping container, and that was pre-populated by Dell and HP, and then it just showed up, and I had the thing online in 8 hours with water, power, and fiber. It was amazing time to burn in.
Isn't that what most crypto folks were doing? They're just buying a little data center in a shipping container and mining crypto, weren't they? Just doing it?
Which is still an option, because that is not a mission critical application. So you can cut a lot of corners when you're just shoving some of those crypto mining servers into a container.
And they do.
Yeah.
They do.
You ever been to one?
I've never been.
Yeah, if it gets too hot, just shut it off for a little bit, let it cool down, and then we'll turn it back on again.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as downtime. It's just a matter of opportunity cost, really.
Interesting. It's interesting. So how are you, what's the ventilation? How are you cooling these things? And especially if you're sticking it, if it's it's not a shipping container. Chris, you're not building a shipping container one, are you? Is it metal? Is it a metal box? Because you put that in Texas, it'll overheat 2 seconds. Just saying.
Yeah, no, these, we're building them to the same quality standards you'd expect out of a traditional data center. So these are from ground up builds. We're not building shipping containers. I mean, we try to keep them to some of the same physical sizes to ease up shipping. You really don't want to get into needing, escorts or, limited shipping capacities. You do have to keep it to, being able to ship down the road. But otherwise, these are built ground up, purpose built structures. Like I said, overall, ours are 53 foot long, 30 foot wide. They're fully welded steel, yes, but they're insulated walls with vapor barrier, fully weather tight. And when you walk into these, you will feel like you're walking into a data center. You walk into a secure vestibule that has all the same level of security and protection you might expect out of a building. And the data center itself is treated as a clean room. So it is, it is the same kind of standards you'd expect from if you were walking into a data center. So, I think the shipping containers, they're not built to that, right? They leak. They're not insulated. You have to so we start with ground up builds from nothing to a data center, no problem. But cooling. You asked about cooling. They're cooled with chilled water. So there's external chillers. We have 2 400-ton chillers that connect to this. You're running chilled water, and you're either going to a rear door heat exchanger or you're going to a CDU that distributes for direct to chip. You'd still have rear door even if you are doing direct to chip. There's not all your racks aren't all direct to chip. The racks have some non-direct chips, so you still have some rear door exchangers. And then we actually also have some refrigerant cooling to cool down the space that is not IT load. So, if this is out in, somewhere hot, Florida somewhere, Texas somewhere, you still have load from the environment around it, the sun, and it's, 110 degrees outside. So we have some, refrigerant cooling inside to address that. So.
If I may add to that too, you really have, there's no necessarily one size fits all for a modular data center when it comes to the type of cooling, because A, you have to consider the application, but B, the region that you're going to be deploying it is super important as well, because the type of climate that you're going to be running these modules in comes into play. Like Chris just mentioned, if you're going to be in South Florida or even in Houston, that's really a certain type of dense air, thick, moist, and even salty. And so you have to have certain types of filters coming in. If you're using fans, you actually probably shouldn't be using fans, because that'll corrode the IT stacks.
But to your point, I mean, if you're up in like northern climate, how you're cooling your data center, whatever, your data center might, let's say you have direct to chip, you'd have to think about how to keep the space warm. You do have some heat, you just got to make sure, if it's negative whatever degrees outside, could your data center get cool in a modular application? But like I said, we have heating and cooling in ours, and then like I said, your point about the environment is absolutely true. I've said many times, it's not temperature, yes, but vapor drive is super important with data centers. If you fall, I don't have to get too technical here, but if you fall below dew point and you start condensing on your coils in a data center, you're losing capacity on your cooling, because now you're doing more latent cooling than you are sensible cooling. So you really need to keep your dew points under control, or you can have it. So like even with traditional modular, it doesn't matter. You need you vapor drive and keeping your humidity low in the data center is important.
You always want to be nerding out. You're just nerding out, Chris.
Yeah, your chilled water wants to be above dew point. If there's anything I'm saying, that you want to make sure your chilled water is above dew point, so you don't drop below and start using your cooling for pulling moisture out of the air when it needs to be for cooling your IT. Sorry,
we really know how to party on this show. I'll tell you.
I know.
I won't keep going anymore. My bad.
Well, what's worse, everyone knows what happens when we drop below our don't point, right?
You better not.
The engineer in me came out.
Yeah. So, Chris, are you sending a modular data center to Alligator Alcatraz? Because sounds like you could handle it if it's in the middle of the swamp, man.
I heard about that.
You got it.
Listen, I won't say no to anything. But that sounds crazy down there. I don't know.
They got a runway. You can fly it in.
Yeah.
They got a runway. It might land.
From a plane.
So yeah, exactly. You might have alligator data center technicians, or they whatever. But all right. Okay, I digress. Hey, by the way, it's breaking news. The one big beautiful bill passed. By the way, just saying, it just passed like 2 seconds. We're breaking it on the news, like this news show. That's right. All right. So, Chris, do you see Flex Central does its traditional data center, but do you see any possibility for modular? Not for your customers, right? But what are the use cases?
I think from my view, the uniqueness that I gather here is a couple of things. One, there's probably going to be very much a good use case and probably a few good use cases. This could be used for things. We have 40 data center setups right now, right? And across those, more than half of them have a lot of the legacy architectures. They're the 5-8 kind of kW per cabinet architectures. So those sites, and forget the idea that maybe the parking lot may not be the only spot we put them at because of security. But having the ability to bring in those things that can modularly adapt for AI workloads and those additional workloads that get much more dense, and even having some diversity there, I see use cases for them. More importantly, I also see some use cases for things that might also be higher level of security. So you get into like DoD conversations, those guys are actually often asking for what they would call SCIFs. So they need a dedicated environment just specific to their use case. They have to usually have an elastic part of security on the front door, sometimes even their own, armed guard kind of concepts too. So there's a lot of different use cases just because of that modularity that is not inherent to traditional data center practices.
That's I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that is a good use case. Or what if a data center is trying to expand? It's not currently doing AI workloads and wants to, right? Couldn't they just put modular expand that way via dropping down to
I
3.
would think that's probably a pretty good application for it because again, we've got a lot of places where we have space and land, but we don't have a space built out for that level of density. So that's kind of just a snap-on or bolt-on functionality here. I think from what I'm understanding.
Interesting. So from a expansion standpoint, if you're looking at from a data center, what does it entail? Like, is it seriously, Chris, do you just like throw some gravel down, bring in your thing and we're off to the races? I mean, like, does it need to be level? Are we getting like really technical terms here? Can I just throw down a pad and it's good? Like, do we have to do anything special besides have power and connectivity? I'm gonna hook up my extension cord.
I've done modular on gravel. Absolutely. I mean, look, sometimes it's site dependent. So, if you put it in a swamp, you're gonna have to probably do some more improvement with some maybe geo piers or some piers. But it's not, even if you want to go concrete, you're not putting a giant concrete pad down for a really large footprint building that's, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of square feet. Even if you want to just put concrete under the modular structure, still substantially less concrete. But most of the site is, impervious. Pervious with stone. Yeah. So meaning like, a lot of times, the stormwater, when you do traditional builds or other builds really large with a lot of concrete, a lot of parking, whatever it might be, you got to put stormwater retention in, for stormwater runoff, because you're just putting down these major concrete pads, impervious surface, where with modular, you have probably more pervious, just stone around the site than you might with, than concrete. Because even if you just put concrete under the buildings, but then stone everywhere else, substantially less concrete and less site work. Because again, I've said, the modular is a lot less site improvement. So, these can go, it's a lot simpler construction. And your question about leveling, I've said this, this is another selling point, but pro for modular is not everything has to be level. So let's say you have a site that's not perfectly level. It has maybe some topography that steps a little bit or whatever. Okay, fine. We don't have to level the entire site to be completely level across the continuous building footprint. You just need to be level where your modulars are. So, your modules are. So one module can be, a foot, 2 feet, 3, 4 feet taller or lower, whatever, than the next one, and across your site. You just need to have level pads under the modular buildings itself. But the modular to modular, building to building doesn't have to be, perfectly level on the same topography.
You're saying you haven't put the little screw adjustments in there where they just automatically level like the appliances do?
Yeah. I mean, even across the data center, it doesn't have to be perfectly level. I mean, you get, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, whatever, 1 inch per foot, whatever. But
so my light's flickering. That means the storm's coming to Houston, Curtis. It's already arrived on the time we spent.
That was quick.
I know, which is really trippy. So anytime there's a storm in Houston, the lights go out. It's like, talk about power issues, Jake. We have power issues in Houston, Texas. But
Amy, was that your grandfather clock that was going off earlier?
I don't know. No, it wasn't mine.
John.
Actually, my grandfather's clock too.
Did he build it?
Oh, that's cool.
Didn't build it. It's a really old Chicago clock company though. I grew up. I remember it from my childhood. So
yeah.
My grandmother still has a grandfather clock that my great grandfather actually built.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I got dibs on that one.
That exactly, for sure. All right, last story. Apparently, Rick Perry wants to get into the data center game. And, he's a former governor of Texas and DOE chair for a time. So what does 11 gigawatts mean? Like, oh, my Lord, 11 gigawatts for a data center site. And it's like west of, it's in Amarillo. So it's with Texas Tech, by the way, which is
like that's small. That's so last week. This week, 12 gigawatts is the new.
11 gigawatts is child's play.
Yeah, come on. there's so much hyperbole. Like, just stop with 11 gigawatt. There's not 11 gigawatts available, and I don't care if you go in like recip or turbines or whatever, nat gas, or no one has 11 gigawatts. So
That's
it's a great story. I just really rolling my eyes.
Is it
All of
nuclear?
Loudoun County will be 10 gigawatts by what 2030, I think,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
entire county.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a astronomical number when you think of the generation it would take to actually create. So it's such a big number. It's like, I think this group all gets it, but it's like a nonsensically large number.
Oh,
Just
come
the
on.
infrastructure for that. Yeah.
Don't rain on my Texas parade, man. Everything bigger is in Texas. Like, seriously, we do bigger here,
I think we
apparently.
can pull it off.
Oh, yeah. Well,
This is fun.
Perry's actually, he's no joke, man. Like, he can, if you need to raise capital, get Rick Perry in your board and the money will flow. The guy can find capital. By the way, before he became governor of Texas, he was a real estate guy. So just saying, he did real estate for a long time before.
Was that going to be nuclear? Were they doing nuclear?
So they were everybody. We have to throw that in there so you sound cool. But we had Brian Smith on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he basically said there's no new small modular nuclear being done in less than 5 years. So, and I'm sure Rick Perry's isn't one of the ones that's being approved. So, So, but they talked about they're going to do all sorts of different kinds of power, which I'm going to plug next week's show. We're going to talk about behind the meter solutions and microgrids and how you're balancing. All these people are doing different sources of power and what's the magic to make that all go. So look at me. I'm pretending to be a podcast host. I'm doing a good job. I'm pretending to be a show host. All right. It is the end of the hour, y'all. Look at that. It's the end of the hour. We made it. This has been super fun. So parting thoughts okay, what are you hoping for July 4th? Is it fireworks or no fireworks? Are y'all fireworking or no fireworks? Go around. Curtis, are you going to fireworks tomorrow?
I think I might buy my own.
You're going to buy your own? That's awesome.
One of y'all mega pack. Well,
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Well, hopefully you'll have two hands out on the 5th. That'll be awesome. All right. Sean, you going to fireworks?
I do mini high speed, high rapidity fireworks fired from a fireworks dispersal unit with a long barrel. So I will celebrate my sovereignty and liberty with things that make fire and loud noises.
Very cool. All right, Chris, are you using drones? Are you doing drone fireworks?
No.
No.
I light my own fireworks to the disapproval of my wife. But this year I did buy. They make like self-firing system where you can it wasn't that expensive either, but you like hook it up and then you can like control it with your phone. So that makes her feel a little safer. But yeah, we'll give it a try.
What a time to be alive.
I know, right? Like I'm still gonna run out there with 2 lighters in my hand, maybe a cigar in my mouth, running out there after taking a swig of drink, running to light some fireworks with 2 lighters going.
You got to be able to smell it on you, otherwise it's not the 4th of July.
It's still gonna happen, but maybe the finale won't be as crazy. I'll have the phone going. I don't know.
Hold my beer.
Exactly. All right, Jake, what are you doing? You lighting fireworks, going to a show?
I will be watching. I'm going boating tomorrow, so weather
cool.
permitting, so we'll be watching from a lake is the plan. So looking forward to that. But yeah, definitely miss the getting to light them off when you take that angle. So next you'll probably be back on the lighting side of it.
Very cool. And Chris, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm gonna go to watch a community show. Alternate years, right? So if it was the opposing year, that'd be somewhere up in Michigan enjoying the lake and probably blowing up our own stuff.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I probably should have known the answer to this question with a bunch of nerds that I have on this call. But yes, someone's got to come
We'll have to
up
compare
with
next year, though. So we'll have to compare next year and see if anyone gets into AI blown up fireworks.
Exactly. We should y'all take video of you lighting your fireworks, and I hope you both have all your extremities when you're done with it. So that'll be awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, y'all. Have a happy July 4th, and we will
Thank
see you all
you.
next week.
Thanks, Amy. Happy Independence Day, everybody.
All right,
Have a good
take
one.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.